Hello everyone, this is Mr. Mark with the Tawny Town Library here with another cooking video for you this week, and this time I'm going to be sharing what is possibly my favorite breakfast meal with you, French toast. And there are actually a lot of little tricks to improve making French toast. For example, did you know that traditionally you're supposed to use stale or old bread to make French toast? It absorbs the mixture, the custard, a lot better. And we could wait for our bread to go bad, or you could do what I did here and just dry it out ahead of time. You take regular bread and then you put it into an oven set to the lowest temperature for about 15 minutes or so and flip it halfway through. And when it comes out, it shouldn't be toasted. It shouldn't be browned at all, but it should be completely dry, which is what we're aiming for. I'm going to be using here some brioche style bread. Brioche is a pretty classic type of French toast bread. I know challah is another one, but of course you can use any bread you want. And our ingredients today are going to be 4 egg yolks, not the entire egg, just the yolks, and then some milk, and then we're going to be adding in vanilla, cinnamon, nutmeg, and sugar. And not everyone enjoys nutmeg, but I do, so I make sure to have it. You can skip it if you don't think you'd like it. Let's get started. The first thing we're going to be doing is making the custard we're going to be dipping our bread into. So we're going to pour 1.5 cups of milk into a large bowl. We can mix it in. And then, like I said earlier, we're going to be doing just the egg yolks, not the entire egg. And if you don't know how to separate out the yolk, you grab another bowl, you crack the egg in half, and then you just sort of pour the egg back and forth between the two halves over the bowl, like I'm doing here. And the egg white pours out into the bowl and the egg yolk stays in the shell. The reason we're doing this is because if you do the entire egg, you will sometimes get French toast that tastes too eggy. The white of the egg is what really gives it that eggy taste, and if you just do the yolks, it'll be richer and really good. Give it a try. Once we've added our 4 egg yolks, I'm actually going to put the egg whites in another container and we put them in the fridge. We use those to cook breakfast sometimes. And now it's time to add our dry ingredients. So I'm going to put in 2 tablespoons of sugar. And I've used brown sugar in the past to give it a more molassesy taste, but either one's fine. I'm using white sugar today. Add in a teaspoon of cinnamon, half a teaspoon of nutmeg, and a teaspoon of vanilla extract. And then I'll throw in a pinch of salt as well. Now it's ready to mix together. So I'm just going to grab a whisk and go at it for a while to make sure it's completely mixed. And when it's done, I'm going to be pouring the entire mixture into a pie plate just to make it easy to dip the bread. And we're ready to get started cooking, so I'm going to grab a pan, and the first thing I'm going to do is spray it with some nonstick cooking spray and put it over medium-low heat. And the level of heat's actually very important. Cooking French toast is a delicate balance between cooking it fast enough that the outside browns, but slow enough that the inside still gets to a high enough temperature. And you can see here I have a cookie sheet with a cooling rack on it. I'm going to be putting this in my toaster oven, preheating it to 350, and then whenever I finish with one of my pieces of French toast, I'm actually going to be putting it on the cooling rack in the oven. This will keep your French toast warm while you're cooking all the batches, and it will also make sure that it's completely cooked through like it should be. It's an excellent addition to the process. You can, if you want, just eat the French toast straight off the pan, but popping it in an oven for 5 to 10 minutes, make sure it's thoroughly cooked well. And once the pan's heated up, I'm just going to grab a small pat of butter and throw it in there, let it melt, and once the butter stops foaming, we're ready for our first piece of French toast. So I'm going to grab one of my slices of bread and drop it in the custard, and you want to let it sit there soaking up the custard about 10 to 20 seconds per side. And this is one of the trickiest parts of making French toast because you want the bread to be fully saturated, wet all the way through, but not soaked, not soggy. And the amount of time it needs to be in there depends entirely upon how dry your bread actually is. The drier your bread, the more of the mixture it can soak up, and ultimately the tastier your French toast will be. Probably the best way to tell is to just feel the French toast with your fingers. You want it to soak up just enough liquid that it's no longer hard, but not so much that it's soggy. And this might take a couple of tries for you to really pinpoint, but it's not too difficult. And once it's ready, we're going to be just dropping it in our pan, and we're just going to let it sit over medium-low heat like this for 3 to 5 minutes. And the exact amount of time depends upon exactly how hot it is. I recommend after 3 minutes lifting up the bottom and seeing how brown it's getting. If it looks like it's been browning okay, we can flip it over, like you see here, and those are some nicely toasted pieces of French toast. And then we're just going to let it sit on the other side for the exact same amount of time. Now I'm going to flip those again, and you can see these are good on both sides. So I'm going to grab these and put these on the cooling rack in the toaster oven. And then I'm going to speed up through the rest of the cooking process. You don't need to see all of them, it's pretty much the same, but I will add a few notes while we're speeding through it. You'll see that between each batch of French toast, I'm wiping the pan down and adding some more butter. This is because if there's any remnants from the previous toast in there, it can interrupt with the browning process, and you don't want that. So we're just going to start fresh each time. You might also note that in the second batch, I let it sit for a little bit too long. You can tell it's a little bit too dark. It's not burnt, but if I had let it sit much longer, it might have gotten there. You do have a little bit of leeway when cooking French toast. And then when I'm done with my 6, you'll see that I actually have a little bit of liquid left over in the pie plate. When I made this exact same recipe last night, 6 pieces used it entirely, but it looks like I didn't dry my pieces of bread as much, so they didn't soak up as much of the liquid mixture, and I have enough for another piece. I don't have a dried piece, but I'm just going to grab a regular piece straight out of the bag, and this is actually a good chance to show you the difference. You'll see when I drop this in the mixture, I have to take it out much sooner. It gets to absorb much less of the liquid. And that's why we generally want dry or stale pieces of bread. And I'll just quickly cook through this. It's still going to make good French toast. It might just not be as tasty. All right. And all our French toast is cooked and it's been baking in the oven for a few minutes. So I'm going to take the whole thing out and you can see we have 7 pieces of delicious French toast, just waiting to be drenched in powdered sugar or butter or maple syrup or however you like to eat your French toast. I hope you guys all enjoyed our cooking video this week, and let us know if you make any of your own, and we'll see you next week.